Evil is all around you.
Come on, let's kill these idiots!
Hey everyone, I'm Jeff Haynes, Senior Editor of Video Games at Common Sense Media, and I'm here today with a quick look at Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. It's a game that came out on March 25th, 2022 for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and Windows PC. Now, a quick note of warning to parents. This is a game that features a lot of violence. Obviously, you'll be using firearms and melee weapons to take out skeletons, goblins, and other supernatural creatures. Sometimes you'll hear some cries of pain, and you'll see some bloodshed that will occur as a result of some of that fighting, which is very, very frequent. You'll also hear some mature language, and in some cases, some immature comments or jokes. In fact, one character is named Queen Butt Stallion, and you take your pick as to whether or not you find that to be funny or not, or immature or not. The character does have a rather pivotal role to play within the gameplay itself. But if you happen to have any comments or concerns about the content that you'll see within this particular title or any other form of media, you can always go to our website over at commonsensemedia.org, where you can find a full breakdown of this game or any other piece of media that you're interested in. So what is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands? Well, it's a spin-off on the popular Borderlands franchise, which was set in space. However, this has much more of a fantasy bent to it, where it kind of is a takeoff on Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, in this case, this is a game called Bunkers and Badasses. It has a celebrity all-star cast, including Will Arnett as the Dragon Lord. You have Andy Samberg as Valentine, the character on the left, and Wanda Sykes as Fret, the robotic character that you see right there. In fact, as Valentine is introducing himself, and Fret is basically talking about how dangerous she is, the Dragon Lord points out the new guy, who happens to be your character. You'll wind up basically creating not only your lore, but also who you happen to be, and defining that and what you will be. But
We're playing Bunkers and Badasses, baby!
I thought it was really appropriate to have Tina kind of give you kind of the flair of what this title happens to be and what you're doing. It gives you that sense that while they're sitting down in their own bunker, kind of having their adventure or planning out what their adventure is going to be, moving their figures around, just like people would if they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you're getting this epic kind of plot, whereby you'll have to roll up your character. Here, of course, you'll see some of them, like the Stabomancer, who happens to be more of your sneaky thief that winds up running around. Your Clawbringer, who really is kind of like a barbarian that has a massive attack, but also has a Wyvern-style dragon pet that can be used to cast fire attacks upon their enemies. You have the Spell Shot, which is argumentatively a wizard that uses a lot of magic or magical abilities to attack their enemies. You have the Graveborn, which is kind of the necromancer, the character that brings a lot of skeletons and the dead up to attack their opponents, and also trades their own health for powerful attacks as well. And finally, there's one other character class, which is the Spore Warden, which, using this kind of mushroom-like pet, winds up using them to distract a lot and also send out certain attacks as well. Finally, let's just go back to the Berserker again, which is basically a Berserker character. One of the interesting things about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is that they really try to ground a lot of the gameplay initially within the sense of, oh, you're exploring this realm and there's skeletons and monsters and goblins, but being that it is a blatant spin-off of Borderlands, in fact, Tiny Tina was one of the more popular characters that kind of was a spin-off.
It's a gun!
She's always about the guns, if you could hear that one section right there. So she's always going to focus on giving you firearms. It's very odd, it feels a little anachronistic, but it is in keeping with the Borderland aesthetic. It still has that looter-shooter style mechanic whereby you are going to basically trade guns, find additional weapons, and figure out the best way of navigating your way through spaces.
Lurkingly.
In fact, even as she's trying to explain what's going on and where you happen to be, as you're lurking, or the evil castle is lurkingly, you're still getting the sense that you're going to be finding weapons, finding ranged attacks, finding various firearms that have some kind of magical ability or magical bend to them. So instead of it simply just being that it is a gun, it might be a magical crossbow gun or something like that, or it shoots magical energy, whatever it happens to be. It still is kind of locking into the looter shooter aesthetic. Even that being said, though, you'll have these moments, especially like you could see right there, whereby we've broken into this crypt and we're going to be introduced into to this mini boss, thankfully by Tina, who is basically reading through her adventure book and is telling you exactly what's going on. In fact, here comes her new figurine for the enemy.
Rising before you is one of the Dragon Lord's most loyal undead soldiers. It's Rivula.
Right. So there's certain moments where, like even if I try to explain the glee that Tina has, it really kind of does a certain amount of disservice to the entire moment, because she's so excited about this. This is one of her favorite things to do, whether it happens to be in the middle of an adventure or even kind of thinking about the next adventure. Of course, because we happen to have our own abilities, whether that happens to be using our melee attack, using some of the spells that we've acquired, or switching back and forth between different guns, as you can see right here, Rivula really is not that big of a problem. And in fact, you can see defeating him showers the land with a ton of loot. That is basically very key to some of the Borderlands style aesthetic. But what's also different within Tiny Tina's Wonderland is something like this. Here, this is kind of the Overland World Map. It gives you kind of a larger sense with your created character of where you can go, what kind of mini quests and side quests that you can do, but you can also here and there run into random encounters. This is something that anybody that's played a role-playing game is very much accustomed to, whereby you're exploring or you're trying to travel from one town to the next or one quest to the next, and randomly you are attacked by some enemies. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, however, you wind up basically being dragged away into a separate constructed arena or area where you can attack and be attacked by everybody that winds up trying to assault you. In this particular case, you're being attacked by cultists. Here and there, you'll be attacked by skeletons or goblins or whatever it happens to be, befitting the random nature of the attack. Now, of course, it's going to be you, and if you happen to go in with any of your friends, you and them versus everybody else. And of course, the game will scale up accordingly to give you all a challenge. But once you manage to defeat them, whether that is using your axes or your special abilities to smash your way through, you'll complete the encounter, thereby gaining additional rewards, and then you'll be able to take a portal to escape your way out of that particular situation. Of course, part of the thing about Borderlands or Tiny Tina's Wonderlands itself is it really does kind of lean into just some of the wacky humor and nature. In fact, right here you have Paladin Mike, who is a paladin in service of Queen Butt Stallion. Again, it's almost impossible to not smile when mentioning the joke, because he is wearing unicorn armor with a huge unicorn horn on the center of his helmet. He's telling you that you need to actively destroy the catapults, but he wants to present you with C4 in a fantasy setting. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Even Fret says that. So Tina tries to think about it. And of course, she winds up coming up with whatever she winds up getting off the top of her head, and it becomes Fantasy 4. Yeah, it winds up working in context. Either way, though, part of the entire thing is it really is giving you kind of this sense of this dungeon master that is kind of making everything up as she goes along, and you are basically along for the ride. Your character, and eventually Valentine and Fret's characters in certain cutscenes, are along for this very odd, very wild ride through a large amount of realms where you're just facing off against different areas. Again, Queen Butt Stallion and her land of Buttsville, which is outside of her castle, is being attacked by a lot of skeleton archers, and of course, it's up to you to try to defeat all of them as quickly as possible so that you can get to the catapults, so that you can defeat those catapults and move forward. There are always going to be a lot of surprises. In fact, if you happen to have played
Burn it! Stab it! Kill it!
Dungeons and Dragons, you know that there are mimics or creatures that attempt to pretend to be treasure chests, and they try to attack the unwary. As Valentine tried to exclaim that he had no idea that was even a thing, and Fret always said that's the reason why she always shoots a chest whenever she comes close to it. It's hearkening back to a lot of those in-jokes, planting the game's tongue firmly in its cheek with a nod and a wink to anybody that's ever played a role-playing game, but then deciding, you know what, we'll also give you some firearms as you're playing this. So you're kind of getting that mix of two separate styles and everything. In some ways, it's almost like the chocolate of the standard role-playing game with the peanut butter of the first-person shooter style mechanics that winds up working very well. Now, one of the other aspects right there that you could see is that here and there, as you're going through each area, you'll sometimes find these scattered hidden dice, and if you wind up shattering them, you wind up getting stat bonuses. Sometimes you wind up getting items. It all winds up playing into part of the reason why you want to check every corner, explore every nook and cranny, because you never know what exactly you're going to wind up finding or unlocking, and of course, doing so gives you plenty of other advantages, including getting you additional gear to make you much more powerful and able to withstand a lot of the attacks that are going to be coming at you from all of the enemies and the creatures that you face off against. In this particular case, after we wound up destroying that particular dice and placing this book upon an altar, Queen Butt Stallion simply arrived to basically show us where exactly we could find a magical item known as the Sword of Souls. Getting past that and getting past some of the other plot points, and there are a lot of plot points that are designed to make you laugh, and of course, given the fact that you have people like Andy Samberg and Wanda Sykes delivering a lot of the lines, as well as Will Arnett, you're going to find yourself kind of shaking your head and laughing as you're playing the game. We're in this one particular section outside of the castle, and we've found that not only have the skeletons started to team up with some of the goblins, but they're also trying to attack some of the farms. So we're also getting tasked with different side quests, frequently from some of the people that happen to be around as well, about what we can do to make their lives easier. And the more that we wind up doing that, the stronger we become, the more we wind up unlocking, such as these chests that happen to have Queen Butt Stallion's likeness on them, but also we wind up getting additional experience to level up our characters. Of course, within certain sequences like this, not only will you find some of these chests, but you'll also find that a lot of the enemies sometimes will be, I wouldn't necessarily say risque, but you will see a lot of goblin rear in this situation. Why exactly the goblins are not wearing pants, I really could not tell you, but it just kind of gives you that idea that in many ways, so much of this is really kind of off the cuff. It really kind of gives you that unexpected situation where things are constantly changing, but also constantly challenging you, which in many ways is also part of the fun of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Even if you have an idea of what you're going to go into when you enter a specific area, it's going to change. As you can see right there, even some of the side tasks that wind up happening will change. Picking up the amount of loot that you have within an area can give you separate goals that you'll accomplish. Triggering certain abilities or attacks will give you certain goals. Meleeing certain enemies instead of using your firearms will give you other quests. There's a ton of these different hidden achievable objectives that you'll wind up acquiring, so even if you're not really planning on trying to fight your way through or trying to make your way through, just like that, we slayed a goblin and we managed to accomplish a goal. So it winds up being some of those things where you don't have to actively try to do things, but you will accomplish your goals nonetheless. So we're coming up on the tail end of this video, but I wanted to showcase, again, some of the absurdity that winds up being packed into Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. In fact, we were simply trying to bless this ship that we had constructed by using a bard to basically cast a magical spell, but of course, the bard winds up casting, as you can see here, Magic Missile. And if you know anything about Dungeons & Dragons, that's a staple of a lot of role-playing game sequences from Wizards, but for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, that Magic Missile might as well be a thermonuclear device or a thermonuclear warhead. And in fact, you have just decided to, by launching Magic Missile, you have decided to blow up the bleeping ocean, as you can see on screen. In fact, as the mushroom cloud in the background explodes and the gigantic tidal wave comes sailing towards you and the city, the only thing that you can really think is we might have gone a bit too far. Even the Dragon Lord thinks that this is a bit much, and you can even hear some of his commentary as well. But yeah, that is exactly what has happened. So we'll leave it here.
You gotta be kidding me.
Especially with those comments. That's a quick look at Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. If you're interested in this title or any other form of media, be sure to always check out our website over at commonsensemedia.org.